Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Peter Jennings. I go by CSU Ram 88 across the daily fantasy industry. Back again at FantasyLabs.com doing a lineup review. A couple things just real quick. Very excited about the news here at Fantasy Labs that we hired Justin Fan, formerly of Basketball Monster and Yahoo. He's going to be heading up our NBA product, which I am just so excited about. I think it's going to be our best product yet, and hopefully will help you guys win some money in DFS NBA. Let's dive right into my lineup review here, too. Little information here on the contest. This is the $20 Fantasy Football World Championship qualifier here. I threw in 200 entries, as you can see here. Really going after the qualifier. Have not had the good fortune, have multiple second places, which is just brutal given the difference in equity. We're talking, 1,500 to 75,000 here. And I just want to talk a little bit about the variance of these things. Obviously, I've been firing at them and not had success. But if you don't have, a huge bankroll, I would not recommend firing too many into these things just because you're going to deal with a ton of variance. Like you can see here, I was really all over the right guys in week 6 and just wasn't fortunate enough to have, things kind of break my way. I lost here by 4 points for a difference of, $74,250. So if you are, obviously everyone wants to chase the big qualifiers, but really be careful with these pertaining to your bankroll. So let's look at my best lineups here. The best lineup I had would finish in 3rd place, Matthew Stafford at quarterback. I had more exposure to him than any other quarterback on the week. I really felt great about Matthew Stafford this week. He has huge splits versus good and bad teams, does poorly against good teams, does badly against good, or does well versus bad teams. And this is a perfect spot. He also has big splits home and away, so you have him at home in a perfect bounce back spot, basically minimum price against a bad team in Chicago. Thought it was a great spot to buy low on Matthew Stafford. Chris Ivory is my running back. I had a decent amount of exposure to him, not a ton. I do respect Washington's run D, but Ivory's clearly the guy there, and man, he is running wild. I think he's going to be a top 8 running back on the season, somewhere in that range, top 10, top 8. It wouldn't surprise me if he got into the top 5. But yeah, he's just been running like a wild man, and had some exposure to him because of his price. Lamar Miller was the next guy. I can't tell enough about this guy. I mean, look at his game log here. It's absolutely atrocious. But I thought with the coaching change, all the stuff they're talking about, trying to get him more touches, was a perfect time to buy low on Lamar Miller. He was only 4,300 here, as you can see. Just a bargain bin price. And the one thing that I liked coming into it, and this is big on DraftKings, is I looked at his receptions. His receptions are big to me, and he's got a guy that can do that, which is huge. I mean, that PPR points is just massive on DraftKings. So I thought Lamar Miller was another bounce back, perfect buy low guy, which is key. I try to do that a lot, especially in qualifiers, is find those buy low guys. So then I had Larry Fitzgerald. This pick really just was the kind of the difference here. So close to getting over the 100-yard bonus. Could have found the end zone. Didn't. I loved the pick. I loved everyone here in this matchup for Arizona against Pittsburgh. But one of those classic, West Coast teams traveling to the East Coast with an early game. Arizona loses, so something to pay attention to there. Brandon Marshall, this was an elite play for me. I had tons of exposure to him. One thing I almost never do, but I did do a couple times this week with certain combos, is I never pair a running back and receiver from the same team. I thought Ivory and Marshall were both 2 guys who were just set up so well that I did that with these 2. Also did it with DeAndre Hopkins and Arian Foster. There's a couple other examples where I used a running back and receiver from the same team, but normally I would not recommend doing that. The reason I thought it was okay this week is I thought that these guys were in such good spots, and I like only doing it in certain spots where teams basically rely on a couple guys for all their production. So, the Jets, really, it's Ivory, Marshall, Decker sometimes, and that's it. With the Texans, it's Arian Foster and it's DeAndre Hopkins. That's it. There's other examples where you basically you know where it's coming from. When Jamal Charles was healthy, it was basically Charles, Macklin, and Kelsey. That's it. So if you find those spots, I don't hate it. I still don't love it because of the negative correlation, but did work out here. Brandon Marshall went off, and the winning teams, a lot of them had Brandon Marshall and Chris Ivory. Golden Tate, I played a lot more Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson was my most heavily owned receiver. I'll show that on another team here just real quickly in a second. But I used Golden Tate as well. Got in the end zone, 6 catches, 40 yards. Good game, not great game. Antonio Gates, I'm telling you, Week 7, get this guy in your lineup. I mean, he is just going off since coming back. 9 catches in both games, real close to the 100-yard bonus both times. I was rooting for that, also rooting for him to get into the end zone, but alas, he did not get in. But he has a great matchup against Oakland coming up in Week 7, who is worst in the league against the tight end. Old man value right there in Antonio Gates. And then DeAndre Hopkins, who I had outside of Calvin, he was my next owned receiver. Everyone's on him. You just have to go to him. I mean, he's getting 15 targets a game, 10 catches here, 2 touchdowns. I mean, the guy's just an absolute monster. Best fantasy receiver in all football. You could argue Julio, but with Julio with the hamstring, it's tough to say. Hopkins is right there, and he's pretty much worth it every week, regardless of the matchup, just because they're going to pepper him with so many targets. And finally, my Broncos defense. I've been playing them every week. I've been saying it since week 1. I think this is a historically great defense. They're just crushing every other defense in terms of fantasy points scored. And listen, they do the one thing better than anyone by far in the NFL, and that's get pressure on the quarterback. When you get pressure on the quarterback, that leads to sacks, interceptions, fumbles. They also have the best secondary in football, so it helps when you can get pressure on the quarterback, and then the quarterback has to make tough decisions, throw quick passes, and the Broncos are picking those off and running them back for touchdowns, which happened here in Week 6. So this is my best team. My second best team was this one, basically the same team here. I did use the 2 tight ends, which I do a lot, especially in tournaments. I think this is a great strategy on DraftKings. The tight ends are criminally underpriced relative to other positions. You can see here I went with Calvin Johnson, Matthew Stafford, had Ivory and Marshall again, and then the guy who killed me. This is the team I thought had the most chance to win, Dion Lewis. As you can see here, I lost by about 12 points. I just needed a 18, 19-point performance out of Dion Lewis, and I win everything. I had some other big teams, the Millionaire Maker, that got him to the 230s with Dion Lewis, and Dion Lewis really let me down. I thought that there was a big chance for him with a big game. I also had Blunt. I knew it could be a Blunt game, but I thought Dion Lewis with the catching potential and just how much he'd been featured and how many snaps he was getting in New England was going to be a successful thing. So with that, guys, this is the lineup review. Make sure to check us out here on Fantasy Labs. We have a lot of good stuff coming up. Sorry about that. A little crazy. my phone went wild there. Sorry about the end of the video here. But make sure to check us out here on Fantasy Labs. We have a lot of cool stuff coming. Again, Justin Fan is with us now, which is awesome. And we have a lot of fun and exciting stuff coming up down the road. Good luck in all your contests. Hope to see you guys at the top of the leaderboards.